Hi, this is Andrew Nemec with the Oregonian and Oregon Live. I'm again joined by high school football guru Jordan Johnson. Jordan, it's that time, the top 10 prospects for the class of 2016, the final list. We've done a few of these, and I know we've come out with an all-prospect, all-state team recently, but this is the top 10 prospects, top 10 seniors in the state for the class of 2016. I know it was a long process, and we've seen actually a lot of movement this year, more than I actually anticipated. How did you see it playing out in terms of guys shifting around? Was it more than you expected, less than you expected?
Yeah, usually things are pretty settled with regards to the top kids. So there was some movement, but that's a good thing. I mean, people are obviously making strides and doing their thing. So I think this is going to be fun to talk about and just see who's jumped where and who's kind of not.
Let's start with the honorable mention list before we get into that top 10. I have a list of 6 players that are on the honorable mention list, and I think it goes to show just how deep the state is that a couple of these names are on an honorable mention list. Ronnie Rust, who arguably the top two-way football player in the state in terms of on-field production in high school, makes the honorable mention list. Connor Chris, Tigard offensive lineman. I think he's going to end up playing in the Mountain West, Big Sky level. Might be an inside interior lineman at the next level, probably a guard. Jesuit safety wide receiver Jordan Happel, arguably the most productive or second most productive safety in the state, up there with Brady Breeze from Central Catholic, but he makes the honorable mention list. Samori Tori out of Westview, a wide receiver. Still waiting to see where he ends up. I think he's going to end up being a Mountain West level player, but really talented and probably the most productive receiver in the state behind Trevon Bradford. And then the last two who arguably could be on anybody's top 10 list, and there's no gripe there. Jesuit running back Jason Talley, inarguably the best 6A running back in the state. And Beaverton quarterback Sam Neuer, committed to Colorado. He's a Pac-12 quarterback, and he doesn't quite make my top 10. I know you're not going to be thrilled with me for that one. But who's on your honorable mention list before we get into top 10s and maybe some of the gripes you have about Neuer, Happel, and Talley?
A lot of the same guys. Ronnie, I've always been a big Ronnie fan. I mean, the kid's a phenomenal baseball player, but since his sophomore season, he's been one of the top players in the state on both sides of the football. I would agree with you there. Honorable mention, Chris, same thing. He's a bubble kid, mid-major, Big Sky. We'll see where he ends up. Obviously, Talley is running wild. No one is stopping Jesuit right now. He could end up with 40 touchdowns on the year, which is pretty ridiculous. We'll see if some of those guys jump in late, mid-majors, maybe a Pac-12. He's a guy that could also play on the other side of the ball as an outside linebacker and do some things there. That's where some schools foresee him at the next level.
Talley really hasn't gotten a chance to show what he can be for 4 quarters yet, and I'm still interested to see what kind of numbers he can put up. Last week against Westview, I had a chance to cover the game. He had 283 yards and 5 touchdowns at halftime. He ended up with 302 because he only had 2 carries in the second half. They gave him 1 series. But you project those numbers out if you let him run for a whole game, and we're talking 560 yards and 10 touchdowns if you let him play a whole game. Just a remarkable athlete, a remarkable talent.
Yeah, he's a man amongst boys right now. We'll see what happens when he gets to the semis and maybe the state title game. But he's another kid that I could see him, being a little frustrated with the recruiting process right now. But in the Northwest, as you know, this is just kind of the way it works. So I think that's a kid that we'll see some offers come later, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before signing day. A lot of things happen. So Jason, I think some good things are still going to happen for him. I'm a huge Samori Tori fan. He had a monster year. Went off, statistically. So I think other than Air Force, she'll have a couple other offers coming in. He's another guy that's had some mid-majors on the sidelines and out to see him play as of late. 2 other kids real quickly. Alex Stickle, a guy that not a lot of people know about, but he's a baller on both sides of the football, and I think Alex is a kid that could potentially play some Big Sky football. And then obviously Kalen Hemphill, who's got plenty of offers as of right now. I will take issue with the Jordan Happel, 2-time Metro League Player of the Year. I think he'll end up being a mid-major / Pac-12 potential type kid. I just really like Jordan's game on both sides of the football. I think he projects defensively, probably even more offensively, and he was Player of the Year Like I said, for the second season in a row. And then Sam Neuer, I think Sam's going to get better with each season. He's going to go to Colorado, I think, do his thing, be a 2-year starter at least. And I have both Jordan Happel and Sam Neuer in my top 10.
And I have no problem with either of those guys. Specifically, Jordan Happel doesn't have a Pac-12 offer yet, and every guy on my top 10 list does. And that's really the only thing keeping him out of that list. I think ball hawk wise, locating the football, breaking on the football, making a big play, I think he's probably the best, the rangiest safety in the state. He's extremely talented, and he is being overlooked. I think putting him 11th or 12th on my list is not so much a knock on Happel as it is a credit to some of the names above him. Happel, to me, is a kid who, no matter where he goes, and I don't care what level, he's going to play himself into a position to be a player and be a factor at some point. I don't know if he has as high a ceiling as some of the other guys on this list, but in terms of production, I think if you're a Big Sky team, a Mountain West team, even a Pac-12 team that needs to fill out the roster, I think if you take Jordan Happel and plug him in, he's going to work hard in practice. He's going to learn the offense quickly or defense quickly. He's going to be a player who you can plug in and play assignment football and do all the little things. Again, not sure it's enough to make the top 10, but a really talented kid. And I think if I'm building a team, an all-state team, I mean, he was my first team all-state safety with Bree. So a lot of respect for him, just doesn't quite make the list for me.
Gotcha.
Number 10 on my list is a guy who made honorable mention on yours, Kalen Hemphill, the linebacker out of Liberty, 6'2", 220, runs a 4.5. Really came on the scene. I don't even think he was an honorable mention guy for us at the beginning of the year. And I don't think he was on very many people's honorable mention lists at the beginning of the year. Played so well in that first game against Hillsboro, and Hillsboro was a top 10 5A team, that he made the film immediately, put it out by Tuesday, and I think by Wednesday, Thursday, he was getting offers from programs because he looked so incredibly dominant. I'm not sure what his ceiling is, but I know 6'2", 220, 4.5 plays in the Pac-12. He has an offer from Oregon State. They upped it from a gray shirt offer to a regular offer, and I think he's going to end up being a player that probably redshirts, and by his junior or senior year as a starting linebacker at a high-level conference. And I think that's worth the number 10 slot.
I like Kalen a lot. I mean, he was co-player of the year with Devin Thompson over at Liberty this year. Their season just ended with that loss to Wilsonville. But he's incredibly fast. His film does look legit. And these guys that are offering him do this for a living. So, credit to Kalen for earning and reaching the level that he has, and I think Oregon State would be a really good fit for him.
You're number 10.
Well, I had Jordan Happel at 10, but okay. I can't. I had a co-10, so you have to
that's
excuse
fair.
me.
That's fair. No, you're fair. You're fine.
Toby Okafor was another kid that definitely is deserving with his size. He's got 5, 6, 7 offers from Pac-12 type schools, mid majors, and so on, and that's another guy that. He was the dude on that line after the state title run from last season, and it was him and some other talented younger guys, Travis McKay and so on. But Toby is a guy I think could add a few more offers coming up here. Has legit size, can move very very well, and I like him. I like him for multiple reasons.
Number 9, I think we have the same number 9. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have Coyote Rufai, Lincoln defensive lineman. Recently picked up an offer from Oregon State, another player who was on our first team all-state, all-prospect list, transferred from the TRL to Lincoln, and I think he got lost in the shuffle a little bit from the prospect radar from a number of colleges, but again, recently picked up an offer from Oregon State. I think he's a Pac-12 level talent. He's probably a guy that's going to redshirt and need to add some weight, add some strength, but really like his ceiling as a defensive end and maybe even outside linebacker in college.
Yeah, just a phenomenal overall athlete. Good job. Oregon State, Boise State, a lot of these other guys that are going after Coyote, and just with his sheer projection, that could end up with maybe the most offers defensively, other than a few other guys we'll talk about here in a second. As many offers as any other kids in the Northwest. So good for him. He's a guy we'll see playing on TV here in the next couple of years.
My number 8 is a co-number 10 of yours. I really like Toby Okafor, the Central Catholic offensive lineman. I think he probably projects at the right tackle spot, especially early in his career. Maybe inside, he could be a guard at 6'4". It seems like they're getting bigger and bigger tackles, so maybe, but I see him more as a tackle. Really talented kid. Has offers from Cal, Washington State, Oregon State. I think he's the number 1 offensive lineman right now in the state. If you took him and lined him up now, he'd be the most productive. I know Dawson Jaramillo projects for a much higher ceiling and has 2 more years to get there. But I think in terms of finished product, Toby Okafor is the top lineman in the state. Really like him. Again, when you have multiple opportunities to play in the Pac-12, to me that makes you a guy and a real athlete, and that's where I think he belongs at number 8. But I don't have any problem with 10. Again, I think it's really that 7 to 13 range where we have Happel and Rufai and Okafor and Neuer is really debatable. It's really tough to separate those guys.
Yeah.
You're number 8.
Sam Neuer, just a big Sam Neuer fan in general. So I think he's all of 6'4", and a guy that when he gets to the collegiate level, I foresee him being even better than he was in high school. He's a grinder, and he possesses a lot of things you can't teach. So I think Sam is going to be a guy. They're going to have a real tough week in this quarterfinal matchup with Jesuit.
It's going to be a tough one, yeah.
Losing 70-0 a few weeks ago, but I foresee Sam being a dude. We talked about what he did on the national circuit, 7-on-7 wise, 20 touchdowns, 3 picks this past spring, and helping his team to the Final Four. So I just really like Sam. I think he's got his best days ahead of him.
I love Sam Neuer, and in terms of kids I like, he's one of my favorite kids in the state. It's not even a gripe or a concern. I saw him play young, and I saw him in a camp with Taylor Barton, and he was there with Willie Flug, who ended up at, I think, Montana, right? And Eric Dungy ended up at Syracuse, and Cade Smith, who ended up at Utah State. And I thought he was less athletic than Dungy, less mobile than Cade Smith, and less technical than Willie Flug. Now, the funny thing is each of those guys really excelled in those areas. But I thought, as a balance, he was the best prospect. My concern is that he's put in so much work early that he's more of a finished product than people realize, that his ceiling isn't as high because he's almost so close to it already. Now, I think he's really talented. I think he's going to have success in the Pac-12. But I think some of these guys on this list have an NFL ceiling, if it all pans out and all goes well. And I'm not sure that he does. I could see him being an extremely good college quarterback, but I'm not sure if that ceiling extends to the NFL level. I think he's polished in so many ways already that's my concern. If we were making a pure list without projection, I think on my list he's 7 or 8. But again, it comes down to ceiling. And you can disagree and think I'm crazy, which is okay, because I've been crazy and wrong before.
I'm a little biased. I do like Sam as a kid. But, yeah, I think he's going to do well in the Pac-12.
Number 7, I might get myself in trouble here with Oregon and Oregon fans, but I have Lamar Winston at number 7. He was number 1 all year, and I think from a pure athlete standpoint, from a pure athletic ceiling standpoint, he could easily be number 1. The problem was he was banged up a lot of the year, and I don't know if that affected his assertiveness on the field, his physical nature on the field, but he didn't seem as aggressive as I would have liked him to have seen him. You compare him to Kalen Hemphill, and maybe that's not a fair comparison, but they both play linebacker in the state of Oregon. And Kalen was a factor on every down. You had to know where he was. And there were times, and again, I don't know if it was injury, I don't know if it was scheme, I don't know what it was, that Lamar didn't seem to be someone you always had to game plan for. And I want my number 1 guy to be a guy you have to worry about on the field. I'd like to bring that up to you. What did you see from Lamar? Because I think we saw similar things and even heard similar things from coaches who said Lamar doesn't quite look like his normal self, the player that we saw as a junior.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of different people on the field for Central. I mean, they had their core guys, but it was a different situation than the last couple seasons. We saw him excel as a junior all the way through the playoffs on both sides of the football.
A man among boys.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was a shock or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it was visible, so I would, for the most part, agree with you on what you had to see. I think with Lamar, he's just so physically gifted and so big that we'll see what Oregon does with him. Because, I mean, you can't fake that at the next level. I mean, you're going to either show up and play or find something else to do. So Lamar, with his ceiling, I think he has the potential to still do some big things at the next level. But I agree with you that it was a tough season, to say the least.
And again, he was injured and he missed a couple weeks, and I think that's really important to note, that on either end of that injury, the week before, the week after, 2 weeks after, that could have potentially factored in. The other thing was Central Catholic schematically looked to be sorting things out, and we saw that. I mean, after 2 state titles, they really at times looked inconsistent. I saw them a few times, and there were stretches where they looked dominant on defense, and there were stretches where they really didn't look lost. That's not fair to say at all. But they didn't look to be in sync defensively, and I don't know whether that extended into the play of some of their elite players or how that played out, but it just seemed like things weren't entirely firing on all cylinders for Central Catholic for big swaths and big stretches of the year. Again, Lamar's a great football player. He's as athletic as anybody in the state. I just wonder, after a less than stellar senior year, if it's fair to put him at number one anymore. And again, he could easily prove me wrong, and I'm sure he's probably going to listen to this and say, oh, I'm going to show Nemec he's wrong. And that's totally okay. I hope he does. I hope you do, Lamar. You're number 7.
Well, we're going to agree on number 7. So
Well, you've got Lamar as well.
Yes,
Okay.
and I think that that's justified. But I will lead into 6 for my 6 with Trevon.
My number 6 as well.
Okay, so I'm a big Trevon fan, much like Sam Neuer. I just think Trevon brings so much to the table with the season he just had, being named Player of the Year within the conference, and also improving every single season, whatever you want to call it. I think this kid has improved as much as anyone.
No doubt.
He's at the peak right now, and Oregon City is as hot as any team in the state. Oregon City could potentially, well, I mean, it's a few games away, but they could play for a state title. I mean, that's how hot they are right
They're
now.
clicking.
Yeah. So Trevon is the main reason why he's incredibly fun to watch. And once again, if you watch his film or watch him play, he does things that you can't teach. So his ability to just maneuver, bounce, accelerate, all of that is incredibly unique. And I think Trevon is going to have a very bright future at Oregon State.
Now, I'll be honest with you, and we know this. We haven't talked about it on the record a tremendous amount because it was a really significant minority opinion. I wasn't a huge fan of I love him as a kid. Wasn't a huge fan of him as a junior. I thought there were stretches when he faded out of the game plan. If he wasn't getting the ball, he didn't always do all the little things. I thought that he was too reliant on catching into his body. I thought he was too reliant on his quickness and speed and didn't do enough to run crisp routes, to catch the ball away from his body, to have that catch radius that we talk about being so essential, to go over the middle with confidence, make a play, and not look downfield before you secure the ball. He's doing all of those things now at such a high level that you have to say that he's progressed as much or more than anybody else in the state. I think he's a totally different player this year, and I've told him that. I said, God, you look so much different. He goes up and gets the ball. He can catch it when it's behind him. He can catch it when he has to dive and lay out for it. He isn't relying on his speed and quickness to define his routes. He's running crisp routes. He's progressed so much and is such an enjoyable talent to watch that I had to move him up this list, and I have to give him credit that I think he went on the national circuit in some camps with you guys, and he realized that speed and quickness, if you round your routes, if you don't get out of your breaks, that's not going to do anything because there's other quick guys, and they're just as fast, and they're just as physical, and they're just as big. So what you need to do is get stronger. You need to get tougher on your routes. You need to battle contact a little better. You need to catch the ball a little better, and he did all those things. Is that how you see it, that really that camp circuit was the defining maybe moment in his high school career?
Yeah, he tied for the team lead in touchdowns in Vegas when we were out there. Him, Samori Torrey, and Green each had 6 touchdowns apiece at the national tourney last year. So he showed what he could do. He was night and day, first day versus second day. When we made that run to the semifinals, Trevon showed up as much as anybody. I mean, it was like, dude, this kid's a potential first or second team all-tournament guy. And that's those flashes. What he did this season is he remained consistent.
Yes.
All year long doing the same thing. He didn't have any gaps. So on top of that, like you referenced, his work in the weight room and his work ethic, what some people may have questioned previously, he's leaving no doubt.
There's no doubt now.
So I'm excited for him. He's going to be fun to watch and just a phenomenal kid.
4 and 5, I think we have the same. If not, I think we both have them in the top 5, and we've had some debate over flipping them. West Salem, defensive end, tight end, Jacob Kaiser, and David Douglas, defensive end, defensive tackle, depending on where you want to see him, Osawaru Ozigizua. One is committed to Washington, Kaiser. The other, Ozigizua, committed to UCLA. How do you see those guys? Because I really think it's debatable which one you like. I like the versatility of Kaiser, but I like the NFL bloodlines of Ozigizu, obviously his brother, a third-round pick out of UCLA with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, you could really flip these guys either way. I have Kaiser 4, Ozigizu 5, and you can make a case either way. But Kaiser on kind of like Happel, but more so even with the fact that he's 6'5", 240 and runs like a deer. I mean, running at our combine in Salem, he ran a 4.7 flat,
unreal,
6'5", 240, and just gets it. I mean, he's a really good kid, and coming up as physical as he is, I mean, his legs are like trunks.
They're huge.
Yeah, and his ability to jump, accelerate, his coordination for such a big kid is incredible. It was unfortunate he got hurt this year, and we didn't get to see him play like we did the previous season. But I think Jacob Kaiser is going to be a 2-time All Pac-12 guy and have a shot at the next level. I don't think a lot of people know about him yet, and I think Washington got a steal, and he will play really early for the Huskies. Ozigizu, totally agree with you. I mean, those genes speak for themselves, and the kid's a phenomenal wrestler. He's just an incredible overall athlete. I do like the versatility of Jacob Kaiser, but I think from a defensive standpoint, you could definitely make a case, for him being one of the top players on the entire West Coast coming off that edge.
The thing I like about Ozigizu that I think, to me, differentiates him from Kaiser is the wrestling. He's got such good hands in the trenches and such solid understanding of balance, again, coming from a wrestling background. He's a state champion wrestler and one of the nation's best wrestlers at his weight class. He's heavy favorite to win state again. I'm sure he will. But those little things help you transition to the next level. He's not relying on brute strength right now. He understands balance and hand placement and getting through people, and he's highly, highly productive. To me, that's what separates him from Kaiser. But again, Kaiser could play tight end in the Pac-12. And when you could play Pac-12 tight end, you could play tight end or defensive end in the Pac-12. That just goes to show how good he is. I wanted to say about Kaiser almost became a national recruit. Had he not gotten dinged up, when he was at that camp in Salem, I went to it. He ran a 4.7. I tweeted about it. And it wasn't a Pac-12 school, a perennial top 20 program in the nation. Direct messaged me and said, was that a legit 4.7? Did you see it? And I said, yes, I saw his legit 4.7. And they said, we'll be in contact. They were in contact. He ended up getting hurt, and then that was kind of the end of things for that. But this was a kid that was really on the cusp of not only being a 4-star talent, but of getting looks from major, major programs. So both kids are incredibly talented. Number 3, I think the biggest mover on our list, biggest mover up, highest riser, because Winston fell a few spots for both of us, Justin Herbert, Sheldon quarterback, committed to Oregon. It's not because he committed to Oregon. I know people are going to say it's because he got an Oregon offer. I have to give the floor to you on this one. You called Herbert as a top 5 guy really early, a year and a half ago maybe. What did you see, and why has it come to fruition?
So Justin's just a special kid. Other than the size, 6'6", 220, football, baseball, basketball, his ability to just always be in the right spot, to know the situation. He on the year, 42 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 32 passing, 10 rushing. His ability to run also works well, obviously, with Oregon's system. And I just think Justin is one of those kids. He's got so much raw talent, and I think if we're talking about someone having his best years ahead of him, I think Justin Herbert will be an NFL guy, and I think he'll be someone that does very, very well at Oregon. I was surprised. I understand he got hurt early his junior year, but I was really surprised other people did not pay more attention. And I get we're not, Oregon isn't a recruiting hotbed, but at the same time, when you have a kid like that in a program like Sheldon that is, it produces talent on a consistent basis, you would think that a few more people would have dropped by and, if not offered, paid more attention. So anyways, I just think Justin is a dude, and with his statistics, those speak for themselves. They have as good a shot as anybody to win a state title, and I am hopeful of this semifinal game. Jesuit, Sheldon, that could be special.
Yeah, that is if they get by Clackamas and Beaverton. Jesuit should. Clackamas is posing a tough test and peaking at the right time. Justin Herbert, to me, was a guy who didn't let a broken leg his junior year, the key year for recruiting, factor in at all. He just went to work, got better. I think he's a better player than he was last year, and he was a phenomenal player last year. Everyone wants to say Oregon missed on a number of quarterbacks. Oregon panicked and got an in-state quarterback because they knew they could get him. But all anybody needs to know is this Shelton team has a legit shot to win the state title, and their team is fairly young. They're not almost solely reliant because they do have a lot of talent. But in terms of leadership, in terms of poise, in terms of playmaker in the clutch, they're pretty reliant on Justin Herbert. And he has them up there with Jesuit, Sherwood, and Wes Lynn, who are loaded with talent. He is not single-handedly leading the charge, but it's close. And if they win a state title, that should tell you how special Justin Herbert is. He's a phenomenal football player. I think he's the most complete quarterback I've seen this state produce in a number of years. And I can't believe I'm saying that because it was just last year he broke his leg, and I thought, dang it, that's the end of that kid who I thought had potential. He's a stud, and he does everything well, and he's a leader. I think he's going to have a really bright future at Oregon, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if he was a starter down the road. I wanted to ask you, I've gotten a lot of questions about whether Herbert could start from day one at Oregon, and I just want to address that right off the bat, and I want your opinion, but to me, that's an almost impossible ask just in terms of competition. To go from Oregon high school football where you're only playing a half, competing against some of the teams he's competing against, to being a day one starter at Oregon with a new system, having to learn different speeds of different players, I think that's too much to ask. I think he's talented enough, but I think he's going to have to redshirt. It's going to take him just a year or two to get his feet under him.
Yeah, I think he could, but I don't think he should. You
Right.
know, I think that wouldn't necessarily be the smart thing to do. But I think, you know, having him be a 3-year starter and have a year, kind of like a kid we'll talk about shortly with Brady. You know, having a year, getting some reps, doing some things as a freshman. I think with that system, like you referenced, it's a complicated thing to get down, especially as a true freshman. So with Justin's physical attributes and his ability to pick things up as quickly as he does, could you or sure? But I think, you know, it would be beneficial for all parties for him to wait till at least his sophomore year.
And to clarify, I think you had him. Did you have him 2 or 3?
I have my number 2 guy.
Okay.
Overall.
So I'm hoping your number 3 guy, my number 2 guy, Summit tight
Cam
end,
McCormick.
defensive end, Cam McCormick. Tore his ACL this year after the first game of the season in a practice, which was really disappointing because I think him more than any player, he was just starting to grow into his body where we were going to see the production match his athleticism. I think he had 2 sacks and 4 big catches for like 70 yards for Summit in their first week. To tell you how good he is, as I stumble all over myself, he tore his ACL and he still heard from Oregon State, I believe both the Arizona schools, UCLA and Michigan. And I know Michigan is still begging him to come on an official visit. That's how good he is. It's very rare to see an Oregon, a tight end from the state of Oregon, or any player from the state of Oregon, tear their ACL their senior year and have a Big Ten powerhouse like Michigan saying, please come see us, just come take a look. He falls out of the spotlight because of the injury, but I think there's no question that in terms of ceiling, in terms of talent, and coordinated for as big as he is, 6'5", 225, that he's got a chance to be really, really special.
With the guys on the Summit staff, bunch of NFL guys. So when Joe Padilla reached out a while back and I got a guy, check him out. This is kind of before anyone knew who he was, and you know he blew up fairly shortly after. I mean, those are individuals, Coach Elshire, Drew Bledsoe, Kevin Boss, the guys that have been there.
Great coaching staff.
Absolutely. And they are, you know, they'll tell you what an NFL guy looks like, right? So Cam is not only just a great kid, but someone that's all of 6'6", you know, and someone that's going to add size. And once he gets back to full health, that's a guy that could legitimately play early at Oregon on either side of the ball. So it's going to be fun watching all these guys kind of playing together in the next few years because, you know, from a Northwest standpoint, it's nice to have this type of recruiting class and be able to watch them for 3 or 4 years.
Cam also, I think I said the numbers already, but 6'5", 225, he could easily add 15, 20 pounds still, and he runs track for Summit. He was on the state favorite. They dropped the baton, I believe, but he was on the state favorite 4x100 team, or 4x400 team for Summit. So that tells you how incredibly good he is. He was the anchor leg for that group. So elite speed in a 6'5", 225-pound athlete. You just don't see that very often from Oregon or anywhere. I'm really excited to see him get better from the ACL, recover from that. He's coming to Oregon early. I think he's set to enroll in early March. He'll be there for spring. I'm interested to see him gain 15, 20 pounds, still run well, and get to enjoy just watching him be a deer on the field with a lot of size. The number one player in the state, he won our recent all-prospect, all-state player of the year poll. The opening finals representative from Oregon, one of three. A top 10 safety nationally on Rivals, Scout, 24/7 Sports. Central Catholic safety, Brady Breeze. What makes him so special? Because the numbers, 5'11", 190, 4'7", 40, don't necessarily speak to the number one player. But you kind of got to throw that out with Brady. Why?
You watch him at the opening. You watch him on either side of the football. You watch him play baseball. Whatever he does, he's typically the best at it. And it doesn't take him very long to pick up anything, on or off the field. So with him being player of the year as a junior, these All-American honors that he has received, he's going to go play in the All-American game. And there's a host of other reasons, but once again, it's kind of like with the numbers don't speak to how good he is, and that all more justifies what he brings to the table. Numbers for so many people are what they have, but Brady's on the field play and his ability to just be better than the individual that he's going against is overwhelming. And I think Brady is someone that, much like Justin Herbert, will be a guy that we see playing, starting as a sophomore, probably getting reps as a freshman, and being one of the top players in the Pac-12.
I love Brady for so many reasons. Such a great kid. He's become an active recruiter for Oregon. I know he was a big part of getting a couple of the commitments they got. Already proving to be a leader, goes to most of the Oregon home games, really pays attention, really knows why they're struggling. I think that's a really interesting piece, is fans watch and go, Oregon's falling apart, what's going on? And Brady will say, well, they're running a cover 3, and this is what's going on with trips on the inside receiver, and here's what's going on with the safety, with the running back coming out of the flat. He understands all that stuff, and so he can easily say, you plug in a little more experience at safety, and you have a little bit more versatility in your linebacking core, and they're going to have success here. Now, I'm not saying that's something he's told me directly or anything, but he just has a really strong understanding of breaking down Oregon's defense and understanding why things go the way they go. That's such a huge piece, because from your safety, you want him to be the last man who's able to tell everybody, here's what's coming. And he's already able to do that, and he's watching the game on TV or watching the game from the stands. I think what he brings to the table is invaluable in terms of a knowledge base, in terms of a coach on the field. And not only that, but he's really good at executing. A side note that a lot of people don't understand is he did the Powerball toss at the opening finals, and he had one of the best throws for anybody. Now, there were 6'6", 340-pound offensive linemen, and he had one of the best tosses of anybody at any level. So that core strength is worth a lot, and people don't understand exactly what that means. He's really good at getting the ball. He's a ball hawk, but he also has so much power that anybody coming over the middle, he's going to deliver a hit. And I think that versatility and knowledge base at the safety position is going to make him a 2-3 year starter at Oregon, and a player is going to be a major factor in their defense for a number of years.
NFL genes, and he was the first Oregon player, last year's National 7 tourney, ever named first team all-tournament. That was 120 teams in attendance, some of the best players in the nation, and he was a first-team all-tourney guy. So I think there's a million things we could talk about referencing Brady, but one of the best football players I've ever seen.
All right, well, that does it. Jordan, thank you for joining us. The top 10 list, hopefully not highly controversial, but I think some people are going to have some opinions on this one. Definitely very different from the first two editions. Thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it.